All right, welcome back to Niners Nightly, and joining us on this Friday to talk all things Niners is Chase Sr., the star of Chat Sports coverage. He hosts the 49er Report. He's with us on the Uma guest line on the Sports Leader. What's up, Chase?
Larry, always good talking Niners with you on KNBR. Let's do it.
Man, Niner fans always love to hear from you, and, this is a great time of year for sure. There's a lot going on. The Niners are embarking on this offseason. We saw John Lynch on the sidelines in Mobile scouting out the prospects like every other GM out there. What's the number one priority? The 49ers have a number of needs, but it's hard to rank them. What do you think's the primary need?
Yeah, number of needs for San Francisco, and look, what they accomplished in 2025 was so impressive. To go 12-5, given all of the adversity, all of the injuries, all of the marquee players out, it's incredible what they were able to do. I mean, just a next level coaching job by Kyle Shanahan, Brant Boyer, and Robert Saleh. And good luck to Robert Saleh as he becomes the new head coach of the Tennessee Titans. But how do you work off of that? How do you improve? You won a playoff game against the Philadelphia Eagles with a second-string defense. Your offense was really good in that game, and then you got smacked against the Seattle Seahawks on the road. And that loss to Seattle has to serve as a wake-up call for the Niners. It has to serve as a litmus test for where they are or as an organization. And the Niners have to evaluate themselves and say, okay, how can we close the gap on the Seahawks? Which brings me to my point here in answering your question. The Niners, I thought, got manhandled and bullied in the trenches. And this has been a problem since 2021. It's been an organizational, philosophical problem under John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan. And I think at times Kyle Shanahan has believed that, hey, I can out-scheme a bad offensive line and we can make it work. Can't do that any longer. In 2021 in the NFC Championship game, the Rams front was a big reason why they beat you and came back from that 10-point deficit in the fourth quarter. In 2022, the Eagles led the NFL in sacks with 70, 15 more than any team, and you couldn't block them up front all throughout that game with or without Brock Purdy. In 2023 in the Super Bowl, I think the Niners' offensive line was a big reason why the Niners lost that game to Kansas City, and that's another elite defense that at that time had a premier front. In 2024, you went 6-11. I thought the offensive line play was pretty average. And in 2025, you lose against Seattle. That defense is not going anywhere. Mike Macdonald is not going anywhere. He's a rising star in the coaching industry. And what Mike Macdonald is always going to do, he did this in Michigan. He did it with Baltimore. This is his philosophy. He's going to load up along the defensive line. If you can't run the ball against Seattle and you can't pass protect against Seattle, I don't care what types of playmakers you have. I don't care who's at quarterback. You're not going to find success on a consistent basis. There is no doubt that in that divisional round game, the Niners' inability to threaten the Seahawks secondary and inability to get open impacted the Niners. And that's why at times Brock Purdy held onto the football, and that led to the pass rush getting home. But Seattle didn't blitz much in that game, 10% of the time, yet their pressure rate was nearly 50%. That's really alarming. And Brock Purdy oftentimes was running for his life. What was the stat according to the Next Gen Stats? He ran for like 300, 400 yards in the backfield. Right. I just think the biggest need this offseason is getting some bullies and some mean guys up front at center and left guard. You hope that Trent Williams comes back. You're okay at right guard with Dominic Pooney. Colton McKivitt's on a value deal. Really good bang for your buck type of player there. But at center and left guard, you have to improve. You can do that in free agency with a Tyler Linderbaum. You can draft a future Trent Williams offensive tackle who might be able to play guard at 2026 on that left side. But you have to address the offensive line, in my opinion, this offseason. And then outside of that, you have to get faster and more explosive on offense.
There's so many needs, across the board. Do you think the 49ers have more building to do on offense or on defense?
I actually think it's on offense because you think about where they are defensively, and we'll see who the Niners hire as defensive coordinator. Hopefully Jim Schwartz, Raheem Morris, if not Gus Bradley. But with Nick Bosa and Mykel Williams coming back along your defensive line, your pass rush with Bosa will immediately get better. Your suspect run defense with Mykel Williams, a really good edge setter. Don't just look at the numbers and be a casual and say, he only had one sack. You'll get better in defending the run. Nick Bosa, actually, I think is an underrated player in stopping the run when he has a good DC. So you get better with the additions of Bosa and Michael. I think you get better drastically. And then you add Fred Warner to the mix, who is one of the best overall players in the National Football League and still the best off-ball linebacker. That's going to help you dramatically. And what happens when you have a good pass rush? It helps out your secondary. So safety is another need for San Francisco, but I just think that with the additions of Bosa, Michael, Fred Warner, with Upton Stout having another year under his belt, Alfred Collins, CJ West will have an opportunity to improve upon a really good rookie year. I actually think the Niners are in a very good spot on the defensive side of the ball, and a big reason for that is because they exhausted so much draft capital in 2025 on defense. But on offense, you need to rebuild that wide receiver room. You need to get better along the offensive line. Christian McCaffrey is going to be 30. George Kittle, who knows when he's coming back off that torn Achilles. I just think there are more question marks there.
Mac Jones. Let's talk about Mac Jones for a second. He saved the Niners bacon this year. He went 5-3, and he saved their season. And he saved John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan a lot of embarrassment and a lot of ridicule. And I think he's almost acted like a player shield for them. Could you imagine if they hadn't had Mac Jones? Could you imagine if they had, instead of going 12-5, they went 5-12?
Yeah.
And now they've got Mac under contract next year for $7 million. And Shanahan's like, hey, we fully expect him to be here. Do you think that's talk, or do you think he actually thinks Mac's going to be here? And we were talking earlier about, Mac Jones might be behind Fernando Mendoza, the second best quarterback that's available this offseason via any route. And if the Niners do wind up trading him, don't be shocked if they get a whole lot more than maybe we all anticipate he's worth.
Yeah. Fernando Mendoza is definitely the number one quarterback in this draft class. And then the number two quarterback, because a lot of quarterbacks decided to go back to school, is Ty Simpson, and he has a lot of question marks. I like some of what Ty Simpson did this past year under Kalen DeBoer at Alabama, but I think Mac Jones is a more sure thing than Ty Simpson. Then you look at the free agency pool. Malik Willis, when he had to replace Jordan Love in 2024, played really well. In 2025, when he came in for Jordan Love, he did some really nice things. And obviously coming out of Liberty, he had some high draft pedigree. He was a third-round pick by Tennessee. Didn't work out for the Titans, but under Matt LaFleur, with that Kyle Shanahan system, I actually think that he can develop into a pretty good quarterback, and he's probably the number one free agency quarterback on the board. But would you take Mac Jones over Malik Willis? I think I might. And then the other option is Aaron Rodgers, who's in his 40s, and we'll see if he reunites back with Mike McCarthy. So because this quarterback class is thinner, Larry, it drives up the asking price for Mac Jones, and it increases the value that he might have on the trade market. What if the Minnesota Vikings, who just fired their GM, they're desperate for a quarterback, want to trade away a second-round pick and a third-round pick for Mac Jones? Can the Niners turn that down when they know they have a lot of needs to fulfill on this roster this offseason? I get it. Quarterback security is really important. Without Mac Jones in 2025, they don't make the playoffs. They don't go 12-5. Brock Purdy has been injured, but shoot, a second and a third, that's some valuable draft capital right there.
No question. And the Niners have popularized the reclamation quarterback, I think, to the point where I think there are other quarterbacks that are going to want to be here. Zach Wilson. If I was Zach Wilson, I would take far less to come sit behind Brock Purdy, hold the clipboard, and be in Shanahan's offense for a year than even to start in some other situations this year, because he needs a kind of a career reset.
Yeah.
Looking ahead at that market, if it came down to Marcus Mariota, Anthony Richardson, Zach Wilson for Reclamation Project 3.0 next year for the Niners, who's your choice of those three?
I'm good on Mariota because he's been in the NFL for a long time, and I don't think we're at a point now where he can revive or resurrect his career to get another legitimate starting opportunity. But with a Zach Wilson, with an Anthony Richardson, I would look long and hard at those players. Zach Wilson has a bazooka for an arm. He's very mobile. Anthony Richardson is a physical freak. I think what Kyle Shanahan would want to figure out with both of those quarterbacks, Mac Jones at Alabama was accurate. Zach Wilson, Anthony Richardson, with what I've seen so far, not that accurate. And especially with Anthony Richardson, he was like a sub 55% completion guy at Florida. So the physical traits are elite. But Kyle Shanahan wants a quarterback who can complete passes on a consistent basis. And if you can't do that, it really does kill the offense. But man, those skill sets as reclamation projects under Kyle Shanahan, who's been a great quarterback whisperer, with Kubiak coming back again, it looks like, that's enticing.
How do you view the defensive coordinator search? How do you rank the candidates? Who's your first choice to be the Niners' next DC?
It was Brian Flores. He's going back to Minnesota, so now it's Jim Schwartz.
Why Schwartz over Raheem Morris, over Bradley, over Joe Woods?
I just think you look at the long track record of Jim Schwartz being one of the top defensive coordinators in the game since the early 2000s. Those Titans defenses were really good under his watch. I know it didn't work out when he was a head coach with Detroit, but I thought those defenses were at least solid. Won a Super Bowl with the Philadelphia Eagles, and that year in 2017, they were a top 5, top 10 defense all across the board. And then the last 3 years with Cleveland, he's had to deal literally with the worst offense in the NFL during that stretch, yet he's still, despite not getting any help from that offense, had one of the top performing defenses. I think about what he's done with Myles Garrett. Can you imagine what Nick Bosa can do with Jim Schwartz? How about Bryce Huff with Jim Schwartz in this wide 9? How about Michael Williams, Alfred Collins, and CJ West getting a little bit better as pass rushers, because that's not necessarily their strength in this scheme. The scheme familiarity, I think, helps up front because you can continue to run that wide 9. Jim Schwartz is the reason why Kyle Shanahan prefers to run the wide 9. The Niners love Chris Kocurek, and he's one of the best defensive line coaches in the NFL. They should, but Kyle Shanahan also really values Chris Kocurek. Well, Chris Kocurek was the defensive line coach under Jim Schwartz when he was in Detroit. And both of those guys learned under Jim Washburn, who is a legendary defensive line coach over the course of NFL history. You'd play more man on the back end. The Browns had the number 1 man rate last year. The Niners were 23rd, so that would require some potential changes to that secondary. But Larry, I told you this on your stream on YouTube, the Krug Show, a legendary show program, that I think Renardo Green actually might be better as a man corner compared to the Niners always playing zone, because I think back to what he did at Florida State. Like, he put the clamps on guys like Malik Neighbors. So I like Schwartz number 1, Raheem Morris number 2. Him and Kyle are very tight. I like the adaptability that we've seen from Raheem. Early on, he was a big Tampa 2 guy because he was coaching as an assistant with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. But then when he took over for Brandon Staley in 2021 and won a Super Bowl as the Rams DC under Sean McVay, Brandon Staley was a Vic Fangio disciple, so he blended that in to his defensive repertoire. And I think that those 2 candidates would just be a lot better than Gus Bradley.
Couple more topics with Chase Sr., who joins us from Chat Sports on the Yuma guest line here on Niners Nightly as we talk all things 49ers like we always do from 6 to 7 o'clock. And join us. We always want Niner fans to join us at 6 o'clock on the Sports Leader to hear our breakdown. There's a number of different topics that we can go into, but one of the things I wanted to get to was the substation. And I kind of feel like the Niners, it's like, I don't know I don't know how credible it is that the substation is related to the injuries. And I don't know that the Niners do. But the bigger question is, I don't know that free agents do either. And the Niners have about a month to get this put behind them. Perception can become reality. McAfee's talking about it on his show. Joe Rogan's talking about it on his podcast. Last I checked, Rogan has a few more followers than the Krug Show. So there's a lot of people out there who have heard about the substation. I use my wife as a barometer to, because she's not really a sports fan. If she asks me about it, that means that the general population has heard about it. She's asking me about it. What's the deal with the substation? How do the 49ers put this behind them before March 1st? I know that sounds like, somehow like a panic, but they have to. Free agency is coming up. And if they get to March 15th and nobody's signed with them and they've made all kinds of offers and they're finding out that nobody wants to sign because of the substation, they are screwed. And so they have to get this behind them. How do they do it?
Yeah, it's tricky. And I don't really know why I and others who talk about this get so much backlash. And some people are like, you should have journalistic integrity. Well, to the core of journalism is this: doing an investigation, trying to figure out what is causing the Niners to be one of the most injured teams in the National Football League, going all the way back to 2013. And I'm glad that the Niners are looking into it. And I talk about this because I think it could be one reason among many why the Niners have been dealing with these injury issues for such a long time. It can't just be chalked up as bad luck at this point. It can be the training staff, the head athletic trainer, the head of strength and conditioning. It can be Kyle Shanahan's practice regimen, although Dre Greenlaw said that Sean Payton's practices are a lot harder than Kyle Shanahan. What the Niners have to do is look into everything and exhaust every avenue and figure out why they are so hurt all the time. And the Niners now, Larry, are worth nearly $9 billion. Jed York has invested into a professional soccer team overseas. He is hosting Super Bowl 60. It's a cash cow. These injuries are impacting your multi-billion-dollar business. And I care about the health of society. I care about the health of the 49ers. I want the Niners to be healthy. Why is this a bad thing? And one of the reasons why I brought this up back in October is because Niners players are talking about it. They are concerned. Christian McCaffrey has voiced concerns about this. Kyle Juszczyk was just on Front Office Sports. He wants a study done. There are multiple players inside that locker room who are worried about this. Shout out to Noah Furtado in the San Francisco Chronicle. He went across the locker room and talked to multiple players who have said, yeah, this is a little bit problematic. It's been a talking point for years, and we need to look further into this, because even if it's just having a slight impact, that impacts a player's livelihood and the physical nature in a sport that is very physical, of course. But these athletes, Larry, Jake Brendel alluded to this, they have one career, they have one body, and they're trying to milk everything out of that body. According to the Washington Post, multiple NFL agents have said that players and clients have reached out to them, and these NFL agents think this could impact the Niners' negotiations in NFL free agency. So this isn't going away. You have to do studies. You have to do research. One of the problems is this has to do with a lot of money, right? This electrical substation is a big deal. It distributes power out to a large portion of Northern California. That's a problem. The other thing is, like, all of this research is very new. There are definitely some studies and research that shows that the dangers of EMF could be leading to some health problems. We just don't know how much. And so I'm glad that some studies are being funded. The Niners are looking into it, but this isn't going anywhere. And this is why the Niners have to address it. And shoot, should they just like move the practice field for this upcoming season to see maybe if that has an effect? Maybe. That could be the avenue in which they could help solve this.
I'd like to know, how much would it cost to make another substation in a different area?
Yeah.
You know, the substation problem, the practice field needs to be next to the stadium. The stadium is, you know, $1 billion deal. I bet you it costs less to build a new substation. I'd like to know how much that costs, and maybe Jed, since he does have a $9 billion franchise, maybe building a substation or contributing to the building of a substation might be in his best interest.
Yeah. A couple facts here that I want to add, Larry, too, because this is important as far as like the research that I've done. Some people have said, okay, the Niners have practiced there since the 1980s, and the substation has been there since then. Yes, but the substation was also expanded upon the stadium being built. So that's one thing. The other thing is that before Levi Stadium was erected in Santa Clara, California, there was a proposal for $20 million for the substation to be removed. That tells me and perks my ears up a little bit. Okay, at that point, were there some concerns then that this could lead to health problems? Delaney Walker has said this was a thing. He played for the Niners 2006 to 2012. Logan Ryan has brought this up. He said it was an issue. John Feliciano really got this conversation in motion when he was on the radio back in early 2025 saying, yeah, this has been a talking point. So when players are talking about it, the organization has to take some type of action.
Yeah, no question. We're going to hear more about this before it's all said and done. Two last quick ones. Hey, JJ, what's your walk away price on JJ? The Niners love JJ. Lynch loves him. Shanahan loves him. The fans love him. The teammates love him. But he was weepy in the locker room on that final day, almost like he knows he's gone. I'm walking away at 2 years after if the price exceeds 2 years, 32 million. So I'm saying about 16 a year. I could go in a third year situation if that number was in that ballpark, but that's basically my walk away price. If it's north AAV of 16, it's just time to move on. Where are you at JJ? At what point would you say, you know what? Sorry, that's too much.
Yeah, that's about my ballpark, 15, 16. And I think that he can get around 20 in free agency. The Spotrac evaluation was about $20 million per year. That's too expensive. And I love what Jauan Jennings has done for this organization. He's been a great developmental story. He's been incredibly clutch. I love the way that he plays a game of football. But Larry, you and I have talked about this. What the Niners have to do this offseason, they are the oldest offense in the league. They need to get younger, faster, and more explosive. Jauan Jennings does not help you do any of those things.
You're coming out to the West Coast for Super Bowl 60. You'll be at Radio Row. I'm sure we'll hook up for sure. We'll do our stream somehow, some way, somewhere. We'll figure it out. Give me a quick thought on Super Bowl 60, who you like, who you're leaning towards, and maybe one thing that you would like to do in Northern California in the week that you're here outside of, walking around downtown.
One thing I really want to do that I don't think I'm going to be able to do because I'm not going to have time. I'm the VP of content strategy at Chat Sports, so I'm going to be helping our company-wide coverage of the Super Bowl is go to Alcatraz. I really want to go to Alcatraz. Now, I'll settle for running across the Golden Gate Bridge because I'm a big fitness and health enthusiast. So I'll at least do that. At some point, I want to check out Alcatraz because that would be incredible. As far as the Super Bowl goes, I like Seattle to win this game. I know a lot of Niner fans don't like to hear that, but I just think they're the better, more complete team. And I think that they are so in sync with what they're doing right now, offensively and defensively. They've been great. And I'm a big, the game is decided in the trenches guy. I don't know how the Patriots are going to block this Seattle front. And I just think that the Seahawks right now are a wagon and they're on an unbelievable heater.
You're the best, man. The star of Chat Sports, 49er Report. Check him out. Does great content around the Niners 365 days a year. Have a great, safe travels out here to the West Coast. Thanks for jumping on KNBR, man.
Yep, I'll see you soon. Thanks for having me.
Chase Sr., more straight ahead. It's Niners Nightly on the Sports Leader.